I have often wondered where peaceful courage comes from. I bet you're wondering, what does peaceful courage even mean? It is the courage to keep working on things that we find difficult to do, things that we struggle with, to break beyond our comfort zones, to achieve a desired result. It's also the courage to not walk past an injustice or to ignore something that is unfair, whether it's directed against ourselves, against another, or to a wider community. This is the courage to stand up to a bully and to be determined to speak our point of view to people in authority, whether they are our parents, our teachers, our principal, our employers, the government. And to do all of that without physical violence or emotional outbursts, without shouting, without insulting, and not even with a quiet resentment. Driven by a personal moral compass, not by anger or fear. That's peaceful courage. Have you wondered where that comes from? Challenges in life are a given, whether when we walk into our first school, when we make new friends, when we prepare for exams, when we bounce from failures, when we make choices on our careers, when we deal with broken relationships or overcome deep grief from the loss of a dear one, or when we fight illness. It takes a lot of courage to overcome these challenges. And many of us find that courage somehow, especially if we want the end result bad enough. And generally speaking, that's peaceful courage. Sure, there might be bouts of emotional outbursts. Why me? I can't do this anymore. But ultimately, it is peaceful courage, the calm determination that carries us over the finish line. So I call that our personal courage. And yet, peaceful courage to stand up against injustice, unfairness, inequality, that's less common. But isn't it the same courage, only in different circumstances and intensity? When I was 16, my tuition master raised our tuition fee midway through the year. I knew that a particular friend of mine would struggle to pay that fee. And our friendship gave me great joy, and so I was distressed and upset when I saw her in this dilemma. It struck me as unfair that the rules changed in the middle of the game. But I was in awe of my master, and I was afraid of how he might react if I spoke up. But I finally did, and to my utter surprise, he agreed instantly. He saw the injustice and immediately agreed to defer the fee hike for the next batch of students. So that was my first recollection of peaceful courage. When I look back at my life, I see a reliable pattern unfold. I realize that the courage to strive to achieve a personal goal is the same as the courage to stand up to unfairness and to hold up under peer pressure. Don't get me wrong. Deciding not to stand by a cause or for a cause is fine. That's a choice, and that takes courage. But if we do not make a conscious decision and we ignore an unfair situation without stopping to think whether we should consider breaking away from peer pressure, that would be a missed opportunity for peaceful courage. I realize that the peaceful courage to do the big stuff and to do the small stuff all come from the same place. Although they are towering leaders of peaceful courage in history, in truth, we are all warriors of peaceful courage. So, where does peaceful courage come from? If we could identify its birthplace, we could draw on it to sustain peaceful courage from kindergarten to adult life, making conscious choices at every stage of our life. Choices that in fact nourish us, that are aligned with our higher purpose and fulfill us. In my years as a lawyer, as a mother, as a wife, and as a daughter, I've learned that the peaceful courage comes from within me. It comes from an inner part of me that seems to know right from wrong. It knows what's good for me and what's bad for me, and I call it my inner self. It knows that it's right for me to take a particular subject, to choose a particular career path, this group of friends, that cause to stand for. And you may then say, but right and wrong is subjective. Even laws differ from country to country, and you're absolutely right. The individual assessment of right and wrong is even more variable, influenced by our childhood experiences. Childhood experiences become gathered and form our beliefs that then crystallize into the way we think, sometimes biased thinking. So the individual assessment of right and wrong can be heavily charged by emotions stored within us. So let me give 2 examples to illustrate this perhaps. To forge a parent's signature on a report card takes a lot of courage. It could be fueled by fear from the anger or disappointment of a parent, based on a memory of a previous reaction from the parent. We know that it would be wrong to do that, but we think that it's a better outcome than to face the wrath and anger of the parent. Fear blurs our assessment of right and wrong. Perhaps this may be another example. Angered by our parents' refusal to grant us the permission to buy a phone, we may think it right and justified to use money that was given to us to pay fees to buy a phone. That takes courage, a lot of courage, but it may not be peaceful courage. In both these instances, there was no physical violence, but there was a violation of trust. Courage is born out of the assessment, but not peaceful courage. In fact, it is courage stemming from anger, from fear, from resentment. It may seem like the right thing at that time, but in the long run, it causes greater harm. If I look at my peaceful, to my inner self from a space that is happy and joyful, rather from a situation of being stressed or under pressure, a place that is quiet and silent, that dulls out the sounds of everyone, including parents, including teachers, including friends, including the sound of the victim, the voice of the victim in me, I'm able to access my peaceful courage. Why? Because joy knows us best. It is an old friend. It was our original state, and it has the capacity to take us back to a less conditioned state of our being that makes right and wrong more fair and objective. Joy has a starting point of oneness and inclusion. Its intrinsic quality is to give and share. When we give, we receive. And when we share our joy, we receive peaceful courage. When I look back at the time that I was able to stand up for my friend and persuade my master on the fees, I realized that I came from a place that was supported by the joy of my friendship. My inner self realized that it was unfair that she should suffer the prejudice. And from that joy and the inner self, peaceful courage awakened in me to speak on her behalf to my master. The same is true when I had to decide a course, what course to take at university. I was overcome with fear of the unknown. Law was for the flamboyant, for the confident, not me, I thought. An old uncle heard of my confusion and very gently asked me to relax. And he said, not to worry, child. When the right time comes, you would know what to do. And his sincere assurance comforted me tremendously and lured me into a sense of joyful reassurance that allowed me to flow into the decision of reading law. For me, reading law and practicing law takes tremendous courage. And it is peaceful courage that allowed me to take it in my stride and continue my learning for the years thereafter. When I had to leave an established law practice and set up my little private practice, I was overwhelmed. It was daunting. There was self-doubts. Can I do it? But the joy that the principles the small practice stood for was the joy that gave me peaceful courage to break out of my comfort zones and take all necessary steps to ensure that the small practice blossomed into a successful career. So joy gives strength. Every time I am to articulate an unpopular position, meaning a position that is inconvenient, a position that causes discomfort to the person who is listening to me, I remind myself to go into a place of joy, draw peaceful courage, and state that position as required. I derive strength from joy. I realize that I can do so much more when I operate from joy. As I keep listening to my inner joyful self, the voice gets louder and braver, and I get braver to face the world with peaceful courage. Would we want to just tap into our peaceful courage right now and see what comes of it? Would you play with me? Great. So, can you identify a decision or a choice you need to make that takes courage? And it can be anything. It can be whether what subject you need to drop, or a girl you need to, or a boy you need to ask out, permission you need to get, anything. A decision or choice that you may need to make that needs courage. Have that identified. Are we there? Yes? Great. Now just relax and breathe. Shut out the voices. It's just you and your breath. Let's go into our quiet zone and just watch our breath. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Now, recall the happiest moment of your life. It can be anything. A time when you laughed long and hard, feeling free and happy. It could be a time when you ran hard, won the race, and got your coveted trophy. Or it could be a quiet time you were by the waterfalls watching the rainbow set behind it. Or it could be as you watch the waiter bring your favorite dish. Any of your happy memories, but choose your happiest. Have we got that? Now relive that happy moment. Relive it. Relive it right now. Bring that joy that happy moment gave you in its full glory. Remember the smell of it, what you were wearing, the sounds that you were hearing. Relive it and let that joy fill you as if it was happening right here and now. Fill your body, your mind, and your heart. Now ask from the space of joy. Bring the object of that decision that you have to make, bring that into your mind, still from a place of joy, and ask, do I really want this? Do I really want this? Is it right for me? Whether or not it's right for others, is it right by me? Am I filled with happiness and joy at the prospect of living that choice or that decision, rather than fear and anger and sadness? Am I filled with joy? Now return to your happiest moment. Enjoy it. It's yours. It's free. It's your birthright. Enjoy it. And the answer that comes to you, and it may not be immediate, is born out of peaceful courage that will propel you to take the action steps you need to live your choice, live a conscious life of choice. Peaceful courage comes from the conviction that it's right to articulate a choice and to live by it and stand by it. And that conviction is motivated by happiness, not fear. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the country and the world was motivated by peaceful courage born out of happiness rather than fear? Everyone would be living from a conscious mind of choice within their authenticity, not motivated by fear of anger, a collective vibration of happiness, free choice, right choice would fill the earth. Would you want to pledge with me that you would always trust yourself to have peaceful courage to do what is right by you? Would you? I pledge to trust myself to have peaceful courage to do what is right by me. Thank you.